at the core, no person wants to do a bad job. Absolutely everyone is here to impress somebody else, to get this recognition, to sort of to validate themselves. This is what gives energy, and this is what creates self-worth. And so many people are actually lacking self-worth that they need to have this recognition all the time. Why do companies by default think that people are bad performers? It's a bit like where focus goes, energy flows. I think that we are now massively producing bad performers because the training for managers are focused on identifying bad performers instead of focusing on working with seeing a person and what a person is capable of and unleashing that potential.
Welcome to the Work for Humans podcast. This is Dart Lindsley. When Elena Aylott was asked to lead global communications and employee experience at Oriflame Cosmetics, she did not want to do it. She believed, like many do, that HR is about administrative tasks, about policies that get in the way, and about layoffs. Eventually, though, she decided to take it as an opportunity to drive real change. She accepted the role and shifted Oriflame towards a new approach, focusing on human-centered work. During her tenure, Elena revolutionized the global employee experience across 60-plus countries. Elena is a seasoned executive in people and communications now, the current founder and CEO of Aylott Group, and the former VP of Global Communications and Employee Experience at Oriflame Cosmetics. In this episode, Elena and I talk about the challenges, successes, and future of people-centered CPOs, her experience at Oriflame, and how she built an effective HR team without hiring from the HR profession. We also discuss creating individualized workplace experiences on a large scale, the importance of acts of kindness in the workplace, how language affects culture in companies, personal branding, leadership, community building, and other topics. All right, as always, please continue to support Work for Humans by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Elena Aylott. Elena Aylott, welcome to Work for Humans.
Thank you.
For 7 years, you were the head of people for Oriflame, and you worked to take Oriflame in a very human-centric direction. And I don't think that we fully comprehend the challenges and the environment that a chief people officer is in and how hard it is to do that sometimes. What I want to do today is I want to talk to you about where you wanted to take and did take the Oriflame human-centric people experience at work and what you learned along the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning. You'd been there for a while because you were there for something like 16 years.
Correct.
And you were the head of people for 7 of those years until very recently. When they first approached you about taking that role, what did you think?
I didn't want to take it. I was then responsible for internal communications department and also the CEO office. So you can say all the PR activities of the company as well. And I was super, super interested in more of a business career. So I saw myself developing from there into some sort of a general managerial role, like heading a country, for example, and then heading a region, and just going away from the corporate career, because one of the business lessons that you learn, especially when you're a woman climbing the corporate ladder, is that all the magic is happening in sales. So I think that if you ask me ever if I thought about any of the careers, I think that there somewhere I saw myself. But if I'm super, super honest, I think that my problem all the time was that I didn't really care about the career. I am a problem solver. So that's why I think I got the responsibilities that I've got. And when I was approached with the proposal of adding up global HR and the whole HR scope to the communications department that I was responsible for, I first was like, no way. It is very administrative role. And in my career, I've been administrating the CEO office. I didn't want to go into this area as well because I've just became strategic. But it was a challenge because then I got a mandate to make this area strategic. And then I thought, that's interesting. Can we do that? And also my whole communication journey was built about providing the channels to people, but sometimes it was a disalignment between the channel and the content, if you see what I mean. We could organize, for example, an amazing campaign or an amazing internal conference, and people felt wow about the culture. And we really have a fantastic founder culture in Oriflame. But then the reality will hit, and every day. And then people actually found that the reality was a bit different, especially when they communicated with the HR department, because it was a lot of policies that actually didn't suit how the company was built and functioned and the cultural vibe. And that is why it was such a big disalignment. So I saw that that was the challenge. And I believe in corporate cultures, I do. And I believe that people do want to feel, well, I don't want to say like at home, but people want to feel comfortable and as they are at work. And that is why I really wanted to put my hands on the content as well, if you see what I mean, and not only provide the channel, but make a difference there. So with my first sort of like, oh, no way, I cannot do the compliance and policies and surveillance of employees. And my biggest fear was that I will become a firing officer, actually. So that was my biggest fear, to then understanding that maybe I can change it. And maybe I can change it so we don't need to fire a lot of people. And I can be an attraction officer instead, or a passion officer, you can call it as you want. That was a bit of my decision-making process.
I like that, chief firing officer. That would be one of the worst jobs in the company. And what's interesting to me that at this point in your career, you were thinking about very general manager, business kind of roles, but that's not your background. You studied linguistics and a fairly exotic form of linguistics, which is comparative linguistics.
Yes.
And so sometime between studying comparative linguistics and this moment, you'd gotten really deeply involved in business and shown that you could love it. Did you love it? Or was it something you just could really do?
Business, you mean? No, I did.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a very conscious decision to work for it was a public company first, but it became private a couple of years ago. I actually always dreamt of having an academic career. And I even was on a PhD journey, writing a book about comparative linguistics and ethnology. But then, how can I explain it? I am a very, very fast-paced person. I really like when the decisions are made and the actions are done, and then we come to the results. I have a really weird educational background. So my dad, he's a physicist. And when I was at school, I actually had no choice because the humanitarian languages in my school, they were not considered being the future for the good students. And I always was a good student. I'm very nerdy. I like studying. So I actually was, well, not forced. I loved my school, but there was no choice. And in this no choice, I studied physics, mathematics, and chemistry. So the majority of my, well, let's say teenage years, I was very much involved with physics and mathematics, and I hated every minute of it. But I still actually got it's called Red Diploma. So I actually graduated with honors. That's thanks a lot to my dad, who spent, I don't know how many hours with me doing my homework and explaining and explaining and explaining again. But it is an interesting thing because now thinking back, I think it shaped me quite a lot. And then when I went and pursued my passion and dream and studied humanities, humanitarian languages, and I studied literature and linguistics, I first actually thought that I would be a writer, and I really wanted to study literature. But then somewhere through the education, it's after 2 years, you need to choose what do you want to focus at. And I think that my accountant from the physics and mathematics, sort of like came in. And I like clarity. I am very creative, but I like clarity. So that is why I chose linguistics. So you can say that I'm not a pure humanitarian person. I am sort of like a hybrid. It's a modern world now. I'm a hybrid. Yeah. I sort of have it in me. And after this, I wanted to work in academia. And unfortunately, academia in the environment I was a bit slow. And I was a young, aspiring woman, wanted to take over the world and do some sort of linguistics breakthrough, making sure that people understand the really, really deep semantics of the language so that they can understand the emotion of a person speaking a different language. They can learn it and then they can speak without an accent and then they can understand each other and then there are no mentality clashes. So that was my call, sort of for the universe. And when I came and I presented this call to the educational board, they told me that, yeah, absolutely, you have great marks. We can take you in. You can start as a trainee here. You can even teach some groups. You do your PhD at the same time. But we see that you're a bit keen about the career. And we want to tell you that here, we are not in support of careerism. So you need to hold your horses. And it was such an off-putting factor for me somehow. And at the same time, I started to get offers from different companies. And I've got the offer from the Swedish company that was looking for an all-in-one person who could speak the languages, who could do communication, who could do marketing, but also could deal with the office. It was only 6 people, branch office there. And the money there, Dart, I tell you, it was just such a difference with what I could get in being a trainee in academia to start my academic career and changing the universe. So I must say that I actually chose the marketing career and I went there. But I still was doing my PhD studies. But then I just loved the business vibe, and I was young and I was sort of participating in different conferences and I was shaping the communication, of this company. I thought it was great. But then I met my husband. We're still together, so it is an up point. But it was a very, very different thing for my life because I had to move the country. So I moved to Sweden, and my husband is British, and he's a political scientist, by the way, in academia. So he is a political scientist at the university. So then when I came to Stockholm, I actually then tried to find a business job. I wanted to learn the business side. I want to learn the money-making thing as well, because this is like exciting. And I also felt that with my background, I could give a lot there.
It's clear that you didn't want the status quo. You wanted to reach for something better. And you came in to the area of, I'm going to call it HR, but you just to start off with decided not to call it HR. You had a couple of opinions about HR. One of them was that it was administrative. And when you picked it up as a strategic role, and you may not have known exactly where you were going to take it, but what did you see as a vision for the future of that function?
But I knew where I was going to take it, and that's why I took the role. So I really thought about it. The story there was that why I saw HR as an administrative role, I think that I probably didn't see it in general, but in my company, it was like this at that moment. So it was mostly the work about different processes. And very often those processes, they felt like an administrative burden. When you have a lot of templates and then you fill one template and then you get the next template and then you fill it in and then you wonder, but they've just asked me this information in the first one. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, let's fill in the third template because we probably forgot that you didn't fill something in the first one. And it was just like, I just felt that there was no common sense in different things. So for example, performance management process, it was built on the conversation that you have twice a year with an employee, and I, as an employee, was having an experience that I want to have a conversation about my goals, and then I have it in the end of the year on paper. And every time I would go and look at my goals, I already forgot what they were because I probably closed them already in February. And because I worked with the CEO, and I was always responsible for the CEO office, for crisis management, crisis communication, ad hocs. I'm like a, fire extinguisher woman there. So, I mean, can you believe having yearly goals? I mean, we just had the laughter, with my boss at these meetings. But the thing is, like, the whole company had to do it. What a waste. And that was my trigger, actually, why I took the role. Because I saw that I could transform that. Because I am for processes and templates, don't misunderstand me, but I think that it should be common sense. And all the efforts that you put into papers, it has to play a role. It has to give you something. It has to help somehow, because then you don't need to do it. And it either can be for compliance purposes, for legal purposes, absolutely. But then let's see how we can automatize it so that people don't need to spend their valuable time on it. And I think that I saw so clearly the irritating factors that I had with some of those things. And then that's why I decided that, well, I maybe can make a change here.
One time I did a study where a team of anthropologists and I went around the world studying managers. And we just embedded ourselves in their lives, and we lived with them, and we followed them around, and we interviewed them for 4 hours at a time. And one of the exercises we asked them to do was to draw a pie of where their time went. And they would separate up the pie, and HR was the world for us, but they had it as a little tiny slice of the pie, and they labeled it administrivia. For them, that's what it was in their universe. And it sounds like that's what it was in your universe. So a part of what you imagined was, let's not waste people's time. Let's make everything we do related to people important. So how did you set out to do that?
Can I just also rewind back a bit? I just want to tell you as well how the whole employee experience came and why I thought that I could change it. As I told you that I've been in Oriflame for 16 years, and it's only last 7 years I was responsible for the HR. And I actually started in Oriflame as an executive assistant. And what does executive assistant do? What's the role of the executive assistant when you are responsible for the CEO office? It's actually to create the flow, right? So you create the flow so that everything is working so seamlessly, so that your boss doesn't really spend time on the unusual things and actually can focus on a big strategy. So what I tried to do when I was an assistant, I tried to automatize everything I could do. I became friends with the travel agencies. So I tried to outsource all possible things and just make it so smoothly. So my motto was that if my boss doesn't talk to me during the day, though I love my boss and I wanted to talk to him about different things, but I just thought that if it's not noticed, it means that it's fantastic. Everything is working smoothly. And then when you automatize the processes there, what do you want to do? You want a person who is stressed all the time, because this person usually is exposed to an enormous pressure of the responsibility for the whole big company. And our company was big, it's 60 countries, it was then when I joined 6,000 people, 3 million brand partners then around the world selling Oriflame Cosmetics. It was an enormous burden. And I saw the man having this burden, an amazing man. And I really thought that if I actually got this job, that I was a bit overqualified for, but that was my way in to learn the business by shadowing the CEO. I thought that can I create experiences for him in his everyday life that will make him more approachable to people and take away all the other burden so that he can actually focus on listening people, on taking in and doing his job right. And that was his wish as well. Because when we sat down and had our heart-to-heart conversation, and my boss was really great because we never actually had this, you write down the goals and I look at the paper and you look at the paper on the computer. He always had heart-to-heart conversations with me. And then he told me, you can do anything you want. There are no restrictions in the career or whatever, but now you are helping me here. And my only wish is that I have time to think and meet people. And I want you to help me with this. And I want really that I meet right people, but as many people as possible, because this is where the answers are. So if you can help me with everything else, that would be great, or find people who can help me. And, thinking about it, so when I think I was asked to take the HR role, I really thought that every single employee should have this CEO experience. It sounds a bit poetic, but it is really like this. Because if you have some things that are boring and they have to be done automatized for you, if you can focus on what gives you energy and what is the core of the business or your role, and it can be different for different people. But also, if you have time in all this by delegating, automatizing, meeting each other, and having this heart-to-heart conversation looking into the eyes, isn't it the best experience that we can ever have? So I actually was thinking like this, and it's not my ideas. I was doing a lot of research on HR, on the trends, what's going on. And this actually I've heard in one of the podcasts of Jacob Morgan. And he is the one who wrote the book, Employee Experience Advantage. That was my big, big inspiration. And his podcast episode with Airbnb Employee Experience Officer, Mark Levy, was fundamental for me to actually start on this journey. And there they were actually talking about the CEO experience. And Mark Levy even then said that, wouldn't it be cool if every single employee would get the CEO experience? And there I was, being responsible for the CEO first, then building communications department. And I was thinking but this I can do. I know how to do it. I've done it for the CEO once, So it was a bit like this. It was more cheerful than you described. I didn't want to battle some sort of an HR burden. I saw a different picture in front of me.
At the center of that, which I think is subtle and easy to miss, is the idea that people's core work can be a great experience for them if they are allowed to get at their core work. I think that a lot of the assumptions that we've built around are that work is just not good and giving people less of it is what they want. But actually, your framing was, no, give people the work that they do, that they want. And let's not get in their way of that work. So how did you set out in the beginning? Because HR is a big space. It's a very big space. And so to jump into that continent of people, where do you even start?
It was a long journey and it was a cumbersome journey, I can tell you. We first started with actually different HR operations departments. So HR operations was under finance, and that was historically in Oriflame. So I've got HR global functions and HR business partners. But the operations itself, it was under finance. And quite a lot of countries didn't really have HR people, and quite a lot of regions. They had finance people doing payrolls, and that was about that. So I didn't know anything about this first, so I accepted it as it is. And I focused on the Jacob Morgan methodology that to create experience every day, you need to work with physical space, you need to work with the culture of the organization, and you need to work with technology. With technology, it means that how fast people can find the information that they need to do their work. And it actually includes both hardware and software. But for me, it was easy because that was my whole internal communication department. And we had already our channels and intranet, and we did Yammers and all those things. So that's what I focused on. And how did I focus on this? We did a lot of things. So, for example, the facility management didn't belong to HR from the beginning. And it is very, very important that everyday feeling starts from when you enter the office. So if I'm truly honest, we started from that. We started from office experience because it was very easy and tangible. And office experience is an interesting thing because usually in the companies, it is an area that has very many cooks. The branding of the office belongs to the brand team or to the marketing team. Everything that is in the office usually belongs to the procurement team. Everything in the reception very often is outsourced. So actually, people who are there have nothing to do with your company. And now think, when you come into the company, the first thing you see in the office, what? It's a reception. If you have outsourced people, and very often, for example, here in Sweden, people interchange, so they send to you different people from the same organization. How can those people represent the first experience for the customer or for a new employee, or even like the employee who works there in the office, if those people are different all the time? There is no experience. So I started on those things. I took away outsourcing. I employed our own reception. We fixed weird things in the office that were pure design but didn't serve any purpose. The immediate thing we've done is that we put screens next to every coffee machine. And we started to run different informational campaigns there, reminding to people what kind of things they can do together, what kind of, initiatives we ran, or we did the recognitions, or we did the birthday congratulations there. And it was all sort of when you're taking a coffee. It was such an easy trick, but it was so easy to communicate different things to people and draw attention to what is going on. And then we had the lab, the scientific lab in the office. And it was the time when we needed to renovate it and at the same time renovate the office. So I sort of dived into the renovation project, and I've done two of them. I once renovated the office and I once moved the office. So I know it all. It's fun. So what I've done is that instead of just doing brand again, we created a group of people that we called Oriflame Friends, who are just people who are interested just in how it's going to look. They wanted to give their opinion. It's like ambassadors, you can say. And they helped us with small things that nobody think about, but they are very important in the office. Like, for example, an improvement box, where you can put the letter. Or it was something about the toilets. We had tiles who made people psychopathic there. And it was great for brand, but people sort of were afraid to go to this particular toilet on this particular floor. So all these like small, easy fixes, they became so obvious. Why didn't we think about them before? And I suppose that was my way of doing the customer research, how you do it without knowing that, without planning it like this. It was just a normal thing to do. But then so we basically adjusted the office so that people would love working there. Then, of course, we worked a lot on the culture, and Oriflame culture from the beginning is, it's super great. But again, you can't say that you have a culture today and then you have it forever. It's like an air. It's the behaviors of people. And we did have words, togetherness, spirit, and passion. Amazing words that come from founders, that everybody in the company know. Actually, it's a difference from other companies because usually people don't know those value words. But everybody in Oriflame knew them. But it still is difficult to explain this because I also felt like, is it a doctrine? Should it be there? What is culture? And then again, through talking to people and also through being then responsible for the recruitment department at the same time, I found out that what people really share with each other when they speak about our culture or when they meet at the alumni meetings after they left Oriflame is different moments that they had in Oriflame, different stories. And then, of course, Jacob Morgan and the whole experience design theory, it has the theory about the moments that you need to work with moments that matter, and those become experiences for people. So we started to do that. But instead of working with moments that matter first, we actually started collecting Oriflame moments that we call them. And that's how we worked with the culture. It was like, a big storytelling thing where people were sharing their moment and as an icebreaker, nothing big and glamorous. But, when we welcomed new people or when it was some cross-country meetings, we had Oriflame Way sessions as well. Icebreaker was, share a memory that you like about Oriflame. And all those memories, they started living. And they were very similar, those memories. And that is how we started creating the culture and wording what it is for Oriflame through those stories.
I really want to dig in on this. And a part of the reason is that I have distrusted the approach of moments that matter in the past. And it's hard for me to explain why that is. A part of the reason is that I just trust almost everything that's brought in by consultants. Because a lot of times what they're doing is it's repackaged, it's sort of cold fish, it's lost its meaning. It may have been a really good idea once. But the second thing is that the way moments that matter are often identified is that they're considered static things. And I'm trying to think of an example of this. What you do is you imagine all the processes in your company. And let's assume that this is a map of the company. So now you've got a street map. And you say, the corner of 5th and Broadway, that's a moment that matters. When people pass through 5th and Broadway, we want that to be sparkly. Okay. But we pick the moments that we're responsible for, so the parts of the city that we're responsible for, but not necessarily the ones that people actually care about.
Exactly.
And so when you started ground up listening to those moments, what was it? Were they HR moments that people cared about? Or were they bigger than that? I keep saying HR. I shouldn't.
No, but it is, you should say it because, again, so we'll come to this now. Actually, they hated HR moments. And that's how it came by. And that's why we then decided to bring HR operations into my department because it just didn't work like that, being separating and being two different bodies and being in silos, and I'm here trying to do soft values, but then the processes are not adjusted to what people really want because they are based on some manufacturing systems that could not be applied to the company based on product design. And that was like a simple thing. So, for example, I can tell you that we had the booking system for the room. It's a very, very simple example. We had the booking system for the room, and there was one room that people could not book. And the HR operations department sat in the corner in the old office. And this one room was called the crying corner or the crying room. And the thing is that, what does that mean? Well, we are back to chief firing officer, right? What is it? Why do we need a crying room? I want people to be happy in my office, And then if you cry, why should you hide? Is that bad to show your feelings? Who is going to prosecute you for this? So for me, it was just like people actually mentioned that. What is it? We really need rooms. But then so when I just started thinking about it, the whole thing was against what all the other moments were about, that we are only together, that we are more than a company, because we have so many young people who actually moved for Oriflame to global offices or just around the globe. So for example, in the Stockholm office, we had 40 nationalities. So when you come, your social circle becomes Oriflame. You're all friends. Why do you need to hide and cry somewhere? If I need to cry, I'll do it with my friends. So all those little things. So they sort of made no sense. But they were, of course, based on some sort of process that was before when you have a formal conversation of giving feedback. I don't know when the person then starts crying and then you need to hide this person somewhere. But I don't even want to understand what it was, but we removed them all. And that was very, very important. And then so we started digging into other processes because they didn't make sense. So the policies didn't make sense. So we wanted to do common sense out of it so that people start trusting that we are A, listening to them, and then B, that it's them who are the customers. This is the experience for them. It is not that one size fits all. And I totally understand why you don't like moments that matter, because you cannot specify what moment will matter for a particular person. You cannot. But what you can do, and I actually use that, there is this theory of the moments, the powerful moments of Heath brothers. Power of Moments. The book is called, and their research at Harvard University. And they say that usually when a person goes through a transitional period in their life, so for example, starting the job, leaving the job, having a birthday or jubileum, like an even number of years, getting a child, moving a department, getting a promotion, for example, or experiencing loss. In those particular moments in time, this is when memories are created because you are perceptive to what is going on around you. So in those particular moments, it is very, very important to be there for the person. And they did the research that what people remembered out of the transitional moments is when somebody did an act of kindness for them. And it was called an elevation moment. So, for example, they come to the office and there are flowers and balloons on the table because it's their birthday. Or as we did in Oriflame, we put the picture in the reception on the big screen and saying, it's, I don't know, Elena's birthday, give her a hug. And everybody was going around and giving a person a hug. We did a lot of crazy things, but the person felt special. And it was not the responsibility of the company. It was a viral thing, like a movement. It started with us in the employee experience department doing it for ourselves. And then other departments, they sort of like, oh, they're doing it for themselves, so we want to do it for our people as well. And then, of course, when different teams are doing this for each other, and it becomes like I'm doing it for a friend, it's all very different. Somebody puts flowers, somebody sings a song, somebody puts, an announcement on the billboard. So then you cannot say that the company shaped the exact activation of a moment, but we planted a thought that you need to take care of a person on a person's special day. So that is how I worked with the moments, and it's the same with the last day in the company, for example. So that's the elevation. And then we were working a lot with, because we understood we had a lot of young people. And we also understood that the Oriflame is sort of like great when we have fun together. So we are in the beauty business, and then people really love dressing up, putting makeup on, it should be a special occasion. But then they just like want to dance. And again, our average age across the whole globe was 38 years old. What does it say? It means that you still have young kids at home. And you don't go clubbing anymore. You just want to have some cool social life. And then our parties, they became so popular. Nothing undecent, like really, really nice things. But, it became a moment because then, people volunteered to organize. We didn't really pay a lot of things for entertainment. People wanted to sing by themselves. We did a lot of a la TV shows, like it could be an X Factor, for example, Oriflame X Factor, or it could be the Masked Singer, for example. But people just enjoyed it. And again, you don't do it when the company tells you to do it. You can only do it in an environment where you're not afraid that somebody will tell you, you're involved in this, don't you have work to do? You can do it only in the environment when it is seen, it's appreciated, because it's part of teaming up and then doing better job together. And then again, this moment of connection, according to the Heath Brothers book, for us, it was mostly at our parties and celebrations. And there we also created a moment of recognition again, because usually the parties was either at summer or at Christmas. And at Christmas, we had this amazing loyalty recognition thing. It's very special for social selling. When you achieve something as a seller in a social selling company, an individual entrepreneur, you're invited on stage, you get a big diploma and you get confetti on your head. So we did it the same for our employees because they see that we do it with the brand partners. So we actually everybody who worked 1 year for Oriflame, wow, on stage, confetti, thank you so much. Everybody who worked for 5 years, wow, on stage, confetti. And everybody who worked for 25 years and even 30 years, and we had those. Average age, loyalty at Oriflame was 11 years. Can you believe it? That's a lot. So those, they received the star in the sky, named with their name. And again, that was the proposal from our people, because nobody wanted vases or expensive things, because you can't really give something to everybody and then they will be happy with this, because people have different interests. But to recognize your cool person, who have been with the company for 25 years with a star in the sky with the person's name, that's cool, right?
Let me just check here. This is not a star on the ceiling of the building.
No, it's a real, we bought stars, that you can buy a star in the galaxy with a certificate and then with the coordinations, and then you can give the name to the star, yeah?
On the show, we had Theo DeHaan, who talked about ritual design. And we talked about different ways that you can create rituals that mark a moment or a passage. And that's a absolutely perfect example of doing that.
I believe in all this. And again, me coming from communication, that was the natural part of my job. I love doing annual themes so that people can unite around a purpose, a smaller purpose for this year, so that they can activate. And then it should be emotional. It should be boosting self-confidence. We even had songs, Oriflame songs, so that when we had our parties or conferences, it was our own song. How cool is that? You work for the company with your own song. So, we did a lot of those fantastic things. But then back to HR. So then when you come to the processes, the flow, it should match everything else that you are doing. Because if it doesn't match, if it's suddenly very cumbersome, if you do not understand the meaning of it, and then suddenly also you feel that you're wasting time or HR managers are hating you, then it's a discrepancy in the company's culture. So that is why for me it was so important to bring it in. We created something that was called people analytics department as well, because I really wanted to use data in all the processes and, for creating, policies. I'm so sorry. I just hate the word. I'm so verbal, like I'm a linguist. For me, policy is like in the prison that a person needs to do like this and then not a step left, not a step right. And I understand that there are legal things and then there are legal rules, but let's call them legal rules then. Otherwise, I really believe in a general direction and then individual responsibility. And that's what I also tried to create, and that was difficult. But we actually succeeded on a couple of those.
So I'm getting the shape of a landscape here. There's a part of the landscape which is, let's unblock people's work. There's another part of the landscape which is, let's do amazing moments. Let's create amazing moments. And there's this other thing, which is, it's not that we're forcing amazing moments. It's largely that we are unblocking amazing moments. And it's very interesting, the word policy. I've never thought about the root of the word policy, and that it probably shares in common policing. Let's take a moment to talk about the words. Because of your background in comparative linguistics, how words played into changing the culture.
Words play a big role. So first of all, the first thing we've done in my department is rename the department. And I didn't want to go for people and culture because it's too vague. We decided to call it as per Airbnb, inspiration, employee experience. Actually, the idea from the beginning was to call it people experience. But because we had the brand partners, so individual entrepreneurs selling Oriflame who are not actually on the contracts with Oriflame, so they're not employed. So it was a bit difficult to call it people experience because I was not really responsible for anything to do with them first. So that is why organizationally, employee experience went right. But it took some time to even get the decision through to rename it. And it's very interesting because there are two things here. Human resources, and I know, Dart, that you have the same opinion. For me, it's like I'm not a chair or a table. I'm not a resource. And then when I was in the management meetings, nobody spoke about even employees. Everybody speak about FTE, full-time equivalent, or they don't speak about people at all. So you usually speak about the administrative cost and administrative cost reductions without actually any people being involved. But we can even go deeper than that. All those job profiles or job descriptions and all the titles. We don't go there. But it is so everything is done to show to you that the person doesn't matter at all. This is all sort of generative. Whoever can do any role because it's also very general. We can get rid of you. We can sell the chairs tomorrow. There is one chair, there is another chair. What's the difference between the chairs? Who decides? And for me, I just don't believe in it because I believe that when you build the organization, the main asset that you have, it's not even your product, but it's actually your audience. And it's who is doing your product and then who is buying your product, if you see what I mean. And there is absolutely zero difference between those who are producing your product and those who are buying your product. Because those who are producing it should be buying it as well. Because that's why they agreed to produce it in the first place, right? And here we come to this theory that employees should be customers. I deeply believe that you should not be working for a company if you hate company's products, because then you cannot really then do anything good, because I mean, your energy goes into this. You will not be able to produce the best products, which means that by default, let's assume that the company is lucky enough to have only people who are loving their job because they're loving the products or services they are producing, which makes them customers, right? Which means then that this is not a chair that you can trade off. This is the first person who will buy your product and then actually think about it and make it better and then recommend to everybody else to buy. This is the biggest treasure that you have. This is something that a company cannot exist without. And even if you are a solo entrepreneur, then you work with partners. You cannot be without the partners. And it's exactly the same chain kicks in. Or you as a person, as a solo entrepreneur, you love what you're doing, right? That's why you're the first consumer of it, and then you are the first recommender. And I really believe in it. And I never understood why this never is a topic for discussion. Because for me, it's so obvious. So I didn't want to be responsible for chairs and tables because I just couldn't see how I can create the culture and how I can take a strategic level of thinking about people who work in the company without treasuring each and every individual there and seeing this individual is the most important thing that the company has. Without it, no product, will be done. So that was the first thing. And then I actually even had slides where I showed all this FT, administrative costs, like reduction, efficiency. And I just showed it to management all the time and then to people. And then I tried to explain that you cannot lift up the spirit of people if you call them like this. Because if there is a horse and this is a horse race and you can call the horse snail, I'm sure that the horse will not ride fast, if you see what I mean. So for me, it was very, very important. And that's why I wanted to call it employee experience, because then for me, experience, it is all about relationships, it's all about feelings, and it's all about memories. And that's what I wanted to create for the people, and that's what my team went after. We were so on fire so that when people come to work, it is a part of their life and it's real, it's not fake. You don't need to put your suit, your glasses, and become a different person. It is a big part of your life where you create relationship, maybe even find love, where you create friendships. It is the part of life when you get different emotions, you're experiencing different things together. And then it is also a part of life that when you are then retired, and we even had this saying in Oriflame, and you sit in front of your fireplace and you think back about your professional life, you remember the years at Oriflame as the best years of your professional life. And that was the purpose. And this really motivated everybody, actually, and even the management team. And we decided to rename it to Employee Experience. But the big thing was, then I had the problem with hiring HR people, because HR people didn't want to work for the organization with a strange name. And some people actually quit, those who worked in the HR department before, partly because of that. It was a very interesting experience for me, because then I had to get into my team people who had nothing to do with the HR. And I was really, really concerned about this, that how would that work? What would I do? So I was thinking then strategically about what are the core needs that I need to have? Okay, if I have a rewards department and people analytics department, I need to have a mathematician and the person who understands finance, right? Because if they do that, they can learn about the salary reviews, about the cycles. It's not that difficult if you're a mathematician. So I actually got a person from the business analytics, business insights, who was working with the whole business insights of Oriflame. So she has a PhD in mathematics. Then I got a finance person to her team. And then we've got lawyers there as well to work with employee relationships, because it's much better to have a lawyer with a broad practice rather than only labor law. Then, of course, after 7 years, I've got a lot of HR professionals who were queuing to get into my team. But in the beginning, I didn't really have a choice. And it worked fine. As long as people are really on fire for that, if they like the task and if they have the core skills. And then, for the office, for example, during the office renovation, the best person running it was our scientist from the lab. And when she saw how we started building the team, she approached me and she said, "You know what? I just wanted to tell you that I'm a scientist in the lab, but my passion is organizing spaces. And my personal idol is Marie Kondo. And I know everything about how to make a place effective. Can I please work for you?" Of course. So she became my office experience manager. And now she has an amazing career in actually real estate companies, fixing offices, and managing it all. And that's how it worked. So I had a bit of a different experience because I renamed it. And then it wasn't normal for the professional. People didn't want to spoil their LinkedIn profiles with that. But in the long run, it actually proven to be the right thing to do because we got some amazing people without whom I wouldn't have been able to do anything.
There's a deep idea in what you were just saying. And one of them is one way to think about the problem opportunity space that you went into is that I'm an asset manager. And my job is to make these assets productive. And so the output of the function is productive assets, which means the most value at a reasonable cost sort of thing. And that is the environment in which my problem is, what are the skills of the people? How do I make sure, basically the ingredients of the people, which is how do I make sure that they have the skills that they need to have to be successful? And it gets very mechanical. The interesting thing about the word FTE is that it's about interchangeability, because FTE means that you are your cost. And so we can move you around in a spreadsheet. But if I was going to say what your output was as a function, it was memories.
Absolutely.
And then you said relations, feelings, and memories. But I would say that memories is probably made largely of relations and feelings. And so it was about memory.
It's not only memories, because when you say it like this, a lot of business people was like, "Oh, come on, what kind of fluff is this?" But the memory can be how I solved this problem, or this was the transformational moment for me when I grew, or this is when I actually took the decision, like my person, to come and talk to Elena and to say that I love Marie Kondo and I want to devote my career to this. And then I got it. And then there is no return from there. And I believe in that because, again, of course, we need to have accounting. We need to calculate how much it costs to have the employees. You need still to have a free cash in the company to do the business, and you need to still have your operating margin. Absolutely, you have to have it. But the thing is that what very often is not understood, that if you get into the best of the person, the core passion, like I did with my team, you don't need to fire 10 chairs. There is only one armchair that you need. You see what I mean? Horrible metaphor. I take it back. But it's just for everybody to understand. One person is capable of something that cannot be limited. And we, by doing budgets, by sort of not listening to people's desires, by taking them to do only, that policy says, we are limiting them. And that is why we need to hire 5 of those. And then we need to instruct them with only one operation they need to do, rather than seeing what one person is capable of and unleashing this person. And I truly believe that with technologies we have nowadays, and with seeing what people are capable of and letting them do it, I think that companies can run themselves so much more efficient. And probably there will be more companies with less employees rather than big giants with lots of employees who are doing boring things.
Is finding people's unique passion something that can be mass produced, or that can be done by rote? Or is it something that's one person at a time as a creative act?
It's an interesting question, Dart. I believe that it can be a massive action in the organization, but it's still one person at a time art. What do I mean with that? So first of all, I believe that every manager, if you decide to have a managerial role or a leadership role, I think that it is so much complicated how it's put in all these theoretical books for a person that some people are totally lost in this. They think too much about how do I give this feedback? How do I do this? Okay, is it situational management I'm dealing with now? Or is it authentic leadership? Or is it human leadership? What was the first line I need to say to this person? Oh, can I rehearse with you in the HR? I totally get it because it's very, very confusing. There's a lot of books about it. But if you think about people's relationship, I truly believe that in its core, and you can call it, I don't know, it's probably a spiritual thing, but I just truly believe in general that at the core, no person wants to do a bad job. Absolutely everyone is here to impress somebody else, to get this recognition, to sort of to validate themselves. And people, they would just be happy to do a good job and to get thank you for that, because this is what gives energy and this is what creates self-worth. And so many people are actually lacking self-worth that they need to have this recognition all the time. So if you think that by default people want to do good job, why do companies by default think that people are bad performers? And then they need to score their performance, if you see what I mean. So I think that it's a bit like where focus goes, energy flows. I think that we are now massively producing bad performers because the training for managers and the systems we are using are focused on identifying bad performers instead of focusing on working with seeing a person and what a person is capable of and unleashing that potential. And this is the first part. The second part, why I believe that it can be still a massive action. I don't like mass production, massive action. Because I think that if you really work, with your managers about that there is no prestige in you knowing everything. I'm not expecting it from you. I want your primary task to be to grow independent people in the company, independent professionals, their parents, independent professionals. And then your job will not be in jeopardy for that. And somehow it's done and communicated, and there always will be place, and there are rotations there. I think if people just get less stressed about that they will lose their power and control, I think that then can become a massive action in the organization when managers started really talking to the employees without being afraid or executing power and so on. What I also see now being done, and I really love what I'm seeing, is, for example, some technology can be used to actually inspire these heart-to-heart conversations. So I am based in Stockholm, Sweden, and we have this amazing company called Spotify here. And I've heard a really interesting story about their internal, I don't know if you really can call it a marketplace for jobs. It's a bit of a matching system that they've created. And it's a very, very interesting story behind it, if I understood it correctly. But if I understood it correctly, I am really, really inspired by that. Some months ago, they released the AI DJ in Spotify. So apparently the story goes, again, I don't know if it's rumors or not, but I've heard it. The story goes that they verified this code on their employees first by taking their data, a bit like, your playing list on Spotify. So taking your different projects that you participated in, different interests and clubs that you sort of have on your profile, and then all the trainings that you went through, both digitally and in the classroom. And they put all the projects available online and all the open positions there. And there is an AI DJ who is matching you, so giving you inspirational ideas on what project you can search for, or this job is available, think about this, like this. So done in this inspirational way, not some sort of a process. I'm actually meeting the CHRO next week, so I will ask her. So this is on my list. But, when I hear about this, if you do something like this with the technology, it gives an opportunity for an employee then to open up this conversation with the manager about, like, oh, I really would love to do this. But the manager as well, it becomes the normal practice because they know that employees get those hints. Why don't talk about that? And that's why I believe that there is a possibility of doing it a massive action, but there is still a heart-to-heart conversation on an individual basis between the manager and employee. And you cannot go away from this. This is just human relationships.
You know what it reminds me of? We had Joe Pine on the show, and he wrote 2 books. Well, he wrote a lot of books, but 2 big concepts. One of them was the experience economy. And the second thing, though, was mass customization. And what you're describing to me is mass customization. It's still massive.
Yeah.
But it's personal.
Absolutely.
And actually, it's massive and personal. And it's not about constraints and no. It's about opportunity and yes. And so there's this space in there, which is that of opening doors toward very individual experiences and individual aspirations. And that's very compelling.
There is a thing that I've also learned very early in my HR leader career. And there is this woman called Lucy Adams, and she was the BBC CHRO. Really, really cool, tough woman. And she wrote the book that is called HR Disruptive. And I actually contacted her after I read this book because she said one thing that I really, really loved. And I never understood why it was like this. She said that her main learning from the career she had and how she really turned it around in the HR departments was that she actually treated employees and people who work for the company as adults. And it says it all. And then I said, she was my mentor for a couple of years. And I remember asking her, what do you mean? And she said, well, the thing is, what mails do you usually get from the HR departments? Like, she said that she was in one company where it was up to the level that, dear employees, it's snowing outside. Don't forget your warm shoes and umbrellas. You see my point? So it's so much curling going on. And then the same thing, if you think about the whole concept of career path, what is it? Is it parents choosing jobs for their children? Or why can't a person choose by himself or herself? So she sort of turned my mentality and my mindset around. And I think that, again, going back to this, as you said, massive customization, I love it because, of course, people need direction. And maybe you cannot offer the whole world in one particular company, right? So there must be direction. There must be some sort of the road. But then let's just let an adult person to choose and create his or her own memories, his or her own experiences, his or her own relationships. You don't need to stand there with a candle all the time, even if it feels good.
Where does personal brand and leadership brand play into this? Because I know it's one of your areas of real interest.
I think it's everything because, everything starts from the top, right? And what I'm speaking about is the attitude to employees that should be projected by the leader, right? And it's not only to the employees, to people, let's say to the whole community of people who are surrounded within the organization. And for me, if you are not true to yourself, if you are trying to play somebody else's role as a leader, if you are not grounded in yourself and you have doubts that other people may be better than you, right? And then because of this fear, you are not able to take away your own ego in a heart-to-heart conversation with the person in front of you, which means that you're basically talking to yourself instead of seeing this person there and seeing this person and not yourself being young or now or taking your job. And then if you are not able to find solutions, to think wild and bright and just see, okay, maybe this person is working in this department, doesn't have an experience, but I've just been to India and there they are doing this. Wouldn't it be cool to just match them, because then some magic can happen. I think that if you're not thinking like this as a top leader, none of your managers will think like this. And for me, this is the quintessence of personal branding. I now started my own company and I focus on community building. And you probably got the part about the communities. I'm really on fire for creating the experiences, but we can speak more about this.
Can I just clarify what you mean by community building for listeners? You see the people working for the company and the customers as one community.
I do.
And so I just want to say, when you say community building, that's a really key idea. And I want to keep going with brand, but I think that's really important, which is there's one community. And that's one of the things that you focus on as a people leader.
We can come back to this after brand. So if you're going back to brand, when you say personal branding nowadays, what do people think about? They think about how to fix the LinkedIn profile and how to have the fake life on Instagram or Twitter. And I deeply, deeply believe that experts and leaders are the main reason why people join companies. Because, of course, maybe people join Apple because they love Apple computers, but they still think about Steve Jobs. They do, right? And so on and so on. So people come to work with people. People buy from people. People partner with people, which means that is all your personal brand. Somehow, personal brand got this celebrity status and it's misunderstood. For me, personal brand is what is your message and how can you amplify 360 in all the possible channels and in your leadership, both internally in the organization and then externally in your industry, for example, right? And why is it important? Because if you are a well-grounded person with a well-formulated mission and message, you then don't do corporate bullshit based on the language discussion that you and I have. Because you come and you have an organization, the organization has a culture, the value words. First, you will not come, if you know your message and what you stand for, to the organization that is not responding in values to yours. So it means that there is an alignment. And then you come, and instead of repeating from stage some corporate thing that don't produce any emotions, you speak about yourself and you say what you stand for and how can you amplify what this organization is trying to achieve. So basically, you are making an organization alive instead of having those anonymous conglomerates. And I think that this is underused in organizations, and there's absolutely no danger that there is one leader and then another leader, because if the messages are aligned, you will have good people. Yes, they will be different, but this is just great because probably they will just be able to expand your audience, attract some other people, both to work for you and to buy from you. So I see it as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. But then it goes further, because when you're doing it within the organization, and I am very, very convinced that you should start from within, honestly, because that's where you build the brand. You need to have a backbone of what you're offering to the world. Then you can go externally. And then you can share the same message with other people, but it won't be fake. It will be real because it's based on all these internal experiences and all these internal projects and all these internal collaborations that you've done. And what will happen? People will get inspired by your example. So they will go and do the same. And that's how the brand for the organization will be created. More than that, people probably will be inspired by your openness and authenticity. And because they see that you are not afraid of talking about it, because the message needs to be talked about, right? They will also start talking to the employees like this. So you as a leader, you have such an effect on people. You just can't imagine. And I've seen different stories. I've seen some leaders who were very insecure in themselves, for example, not really comfortable with getting questions. And then other leaders notice it. And then suddenly the whole organization stops asking questions. And we usually don't call it personal brand. I decided to call it personal brand because for me, it's the real one. It's not the LinkedIn profile. And that's how you build communities, because based on such leaders, people collect around. And then how the community gets the soul.
What is so deep about it is that brand is not surface.
No.
It's not paint. It's the structure of the building. It's the architecture of the building. So it's the thing that's deep inside you that manifests as your actions, not paint.
Exactly. And I think, again, so we are so used to organizations being a brand. But I actually believe that it's people who are brands. And then they amplify the products or services that organization is offering by putting their brand there and making their brand multiplied by the organizational brand. Maybe too complicated, but I think it works like that. And it's a bit back to these experiences and moments and memories that you and I talked about. It's massive customization instead of mass production.
I hear this foundation of getting out of the way sort of thing, this sort of foundation of hygiene. Let's get the basic things right. Let's make the basic things simple. Then there's this far-reaching thing, which is let's create memories and relationships and community, and that's our big objective. Is there something connecting the two? Is there a middle of the sandwich?
Yes, absolutely it is. I use the pyramid to explain it all because it then makes it very, very simple and tangible and relatable, especially for HR professionals. So think about the Maslow pyramids of need. So you start with the bottom layer, and the bottom layer is something that you cannot live without. As you said yourself, hygiene. This is the contractual layer of the employee experience. I call it the flow. It's more fun. You remember my memories about me being an assistant, creating the flow so that nobody comes to me, and then when the flow breaks, then people are upset. You don't want the flow break. So this is when you get your salaries. This is when you get your contracts. This is when you get your maternity payments. And this is where you get the salary review. All what we call the HR annual cycle, it is here. Then next layer, this is actually an experiential layer. Why is it experiential? This is what you, Dart, say when you said, what do you hire your job to do for you? This is the layer of what's in it for me. And it can be either your professional development or even personal development. We usually call it career, but it's so much broader than this. This is the growth that happens for you. And then it's your well-being. It's how you feel. So how you grow and how you feel. And then you organize it as an HR department, right? Or employee experience department in different initiatives. And then the top layer, we call it emotional layer. And this is the layer of belonging. This is when you have the flow. Your job is giving you what you came to take from here. And then you are giving things to the job. And here comes the moments that matter. We had those Oriflame moments. Here comes having fun together or helping together or being on fire for some global purpose or just liking a person who sits next to you in the office and that's why going to job every day. It can be so different. But this is what makes people soul sync, basically. So those three layers then, contractual, experiential, what's in it for me, and belonging, emotional. I'm here for the bigger purpose. I am making an impact. And it's interesting. We have a joint friend, Alan Tooth. And Alan, he is an experienced pro, an experienced designer. And he told me one thing that I actually apply to everything. And this makes so much sense. He told me that when you create experience, you can create different sort of, outcomes of this experience. The experience can be good. You come out of the airport, and then they ask you to rate up, down, even. So it's a good experience. The experience can be meaningful. It means that, we did something differently. I remember that. That was nice. Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And the majority of company, when it comes to, for example, employee experience, they are there. So we do different initiatives, we do mentorship projects, we do opportunities, job swaps. It can be different things. But then there is this higher level. And this level is called transformational experience. And transformational experience, this is where the magic happens. And usually for me, is this, again, back to Heath Brothers, this is the insight moment. And what is it? It is when you see how your actions create an impact that transforms somebody else's life. And by seeing that, you transform yourself without noticing it, but you do. So if you think this pyramid of the employee experience, so the contractual level, this is a good experience. It's great to get a salary, right? I mean, I don't want to work for a company where you don't get it. Then we come to the meaningful experience, where your job gives you what you really are looking for and when you're here for, and then you feel good, and then you grow professionally and you get new knowledge, you meet new people, you expand your network. Fantastic, meaningful, right? But then we come to the transformational experience. And this is where the higher purpose kicks in. And I really love when companies have a defined purpose, but it doesn't even have to be that. Because back to our heart-to-heart conversations, if I as a manager see throughout my heart-to-heart conversation how my person finds meaning at work and gets the meaningful experience, it becomes transformation because this person will grow. The life is affected. And I, as a human, will be touched because I'm a part of it. And then I will transform. I will want to do it for more people. And I will probably change the fear of me being, I don't know, removed from my job will be away because the joy of seeing another person happy will overwhelm that. So I don't know, maybe I'm too naive or lyrical, but that's for me is the quintessence of belonging. It's not for asking people to do 150. They will do it anyhow if you give them opportunities and they can see how their life can transform if they do something that they really, really love.
You know what the model that you're describing reminds me of, the three levels? It reminds me a little bit of Kano analysis, which is there are things in any product that are dissatisfiers, which is if you notice them, that's bad. So the bottom of the pyramid, the contractual stuff, if you notice it happening, that's not good. It should be invisible because all it can be is bad. It's the basics. Then there's this idea of satisficers or satisfiers. These are things that a little more of them is a little better. But then the top of this is delighters, which is you notice them being good. But if they're not there, you don't notice because they're the most special things. They're the most important things. Now, you need to solve for the dissatisfiers. But they have different curves, by the way, in this analysis, which is that you can only get so good at dissatisfiers because nobody notices if you're being perfect at being invisible.
And that's why I think technology is great there. And I think that standard technology is fine there as well. And that's where people get stuck because they start implementing systems and they lose their time with something that will not really matter because it's the only area where one size fits all. But everything else you need to have customization and you need to see the individual.
Yes. And in fact, Joe Pine, at the bottom of his scale, the top of his scale is transformation. And the bottom of his scale is commodities. And so commodities, uniformity is really important. But as you move up through experience, it gets much more personalized. And then finally, it reaches transformation, which is very personal. It makes a lot of sense to me. It's tying together a lot of things that we've talked about in the show.
And think, Dar, that if you're used to delighters, you don't notice commodities because the company is great in them, right? So you grow, you develop, you progress in your company, and then you're used to those delighters, right? Because you're used to them, they're like air. And then suddenly it all changes and the delighters are gone. It's the first thing you will notice because they're so deeply emotional. You won't even understand what is happening, but you will not like it. And this is so interesting how I just need to tell you one thing. I yesterday was at this meeting and it was a meeting around the book that is called See the Person. It's in Swedish, Se människan. And the author of the book is the CEO, the former CEO of Scandinavian Airlines. His name is Jan Carlson. He's very old now. He's probably about, I don't know, over 80 years old, but maybe 90. I don't know. I didn't really ask. He's one of the most amazing people because he transformed the air industry and he transformed Scandinavian Airlines. And what he was saying, it was so amazing. Basically, his whole religion was that you need to be obsessed with your customers through being obsessed with your employees. I've never heard a person from this industrial era saying that. Then I raised my hand and I asked him, look, I've been, the head of communications, head of HR. Why is it so that if such big people like you, who are like in the biggest of the history, many books, you transform the profits, oh my God. If you say that people are the most important thing, and you really need to, because his thing was that you need to individualize. He said, for example, that when they joined Lufthansa, the Star Alliance, Lufthansa wanted SIS to do the business class. But SAS knew that they couldn't do it because they asked the people, the business people who went with them, and the companies, especially in the Nordics, they didn't want to spend money on business class because it's not in the culture. And he took this fight, so he called it Euro class and sort of like, but he didn't, and he gave them magazines, but he didn't put the prices up. It was so interesting how he said. So I said, why is it so that everybody is saying that people are so important, that you need to focus on the individual, but you're still the last item on the agenda when you are responsible for the people function. You never get the budgets, and then, basically, you are never interesting because the shareholder value is very low in this particular quarter. And then he told me a very, very interesting thing. He told me that you need to remember, Elena, he said, that especially in Sweden, but in a lot of countries, big companies, right? Big companies. When you are too big, you are not used to competition. You are becoming like a monopoly. And when you become very, very big, so then you actually need a lot of accountants because you don't need to become better all the time. This sort of thing dies out somehow because it's only competition who sort of puts you there, and then you need to cooperate with other people. So he told me that this is unfortunately a disease of big companies, that as soon as you become big enough, you forget about the human element because there is no competition reminding you that this is what you need to focus on. You're just starting focusing on, basically counting your cash. And he said that if you look at the smaller company or the startups or the companies who are growing or the local community businesses, look what they are doing. They're all valuing their people, they're all families, and they're cooperating with each other. Even competition becomes like relationship building thing, it's totally different. So he said to me that he still believes that now the world is changing. And even big companies now, it's not going to be monopolies anymore. It will be times when it will change. So he told me that we should press on with the human approach because he really believes that it matters. And you know what he told me? He told me that, how do you know that it really matters? It's all about what goes into people's hearts, what people react on. And he said, you remember this song, Love is in the Air? And I said, yeah, I love this song. And he said, there is no song that is called Numbers in the Air. Isn't this great?
That's wonderful.
It is, yeah.
3 closing questions. What do you hire your job to do for you?
I think that looking at my experiences before and why I decided now to start my own company, I hire my job to give me an opportunity to meet a lot of amazing people and to be somehow a part of this transformation that you and I were talking about, seeing how they suddenly look at themselves and feel, wow, I'm amazing. I can do this. And that's why I will dare taking this opportunity. I will reach out to this person and I will try to do this job, even if I haven't tried it before. And it gives me, even now, when I'm talking about it, it gives me goosebumps. I just really love it because, again, going back to, I really believe that everybody wants to do a good job and I want to be a part of it. So that's what I hire my job for meeting new amazing people and having a lot of conversation with them and then helping them, if I may, to understand that they're amazing.
What does it cost you?
What does it cost me? I give a lot of energy all the time, which means that I need to replenish this energy for myself because I cannot live without giving out the energy. See how I'm gesticulating all the time. So what does it cost me? It costs me to go to the gym 5 times a week, because if I don't do this, I will not have any energy to project it on other people. But also, you know what, with Dart, it cost me a lot of emotional. I'm too connected personally and emotionally, but it's good. I like it. But I take everything close to my heart. It makes my life hard. I actually sometimes get sick because of that, but I still treasure it, because if I don't do it, it means I'm fake. This is how I am. So I'm fine with this, and this is the part of it that even if it costs me, I still want to do what I'm doing.
Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Well, the best thing is to go to my LinkedIn page to connect with me immediately. And then next week, I'm launching my website, aylottgroup.com. And then there, they will know everything about how I can help people to bring their communities together of employees, affiliates, and customers, and how we can kick off their amazing personal brands, meaning authentic ones, not fake ones, with their proper, pure message that they already have in them. We'll just unleash it.
So people can find it. It's AYLOTT group.
Yes, .com.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Fantastic, deep conversation.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. And I love talking to you. Hope for many, many more conversations about human side of business.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Work for Humans. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. And share the show with one person you think would get value from it. Believe it or not, this really helps us grow the show and reach more people who want to build the kind of work that people really want. As always, thank you to my producer, Jason Ames at Ninth Path Audio, for his insights into content and his high standard for quality. Final note, the opinions shared here are my own and not the views of Google or Cisco Systems. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.